every timeline that I've read about this injury, and yes, I do Google stuff myself and try to learn about it because I was lacking in the information on this surgery. Doing this now gives the player a chance. And if you wait another month, it may not.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Chiefs Kingdom. Ja'Marr Chase hates the Chiefs. He has admitted this. He has been respectful to the players on the field, but he just came out and said he didn't like us very much. So we can't be surprised when he continues giving ammo or saying things that reminds us that he does not like us, because he already came out and straight up said, I don't really like the Chiefs. I don't like those people. I'm not saying that guy's name, like he said about Patrick Mahomes in the NFL Top 100. But this is 10 Things, presented by The Spot, formerly known as Mission Taco Joint, which is being rebranded to Session Tacos here over the next several months. They're rebranding because the tortilla company actually sued them for the name. It's a true story. But I'm BJ Kissel, and we appreciate you for hanging out. We appreciate Mission Taco or Session Tacos, whatever we're going to call them right now, for being a sponsor of this show, but also for partnering with us on the KCSN Foundation side of things and providing tacos once a month with us to deliver to Hope Faith Ministries homeless shelter, where we go up there and execute our Feed It Forward program. So we appreciate Mission Taco Joint or Session Tacos. Wherever they are, I love tacos. I don't care what they called, as long as they're good, and they are, I'm going to go eat them. So we appreciate their support. Let's get to the 10 things that I'm thinking about right now, besides just laughing at Ja'Marr Chase. And every time he says something, Chiefs fans get riled up. I actually like the fact that he's very respectfully admitting that he just doesn't like us. And at least he's upfront about it. So we can't be surprised. But we do have a special guest joining us for the first, let's say, 4 of the 10 things. And this guy has been on NFL sidelines with Andy Reid and the Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles before that, talking to Aaron Borgmann, who, alongside another longtime legendary athletic trainer for the Chiefs, Evan Kraft, have now launched their own podcast, Sports Med Bros, which I, for one, will be listening because these guys know their stuff. They've been in the trenches, and above all, they're genuinely good dudes. I imagine this will be a very entertaining podcast. So let's welcome on Aaron to educate us on a few things. What's up, Aaron?
Thanks as always for having me, BJ. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know what? We had talked about doing this show before the Hollywood Brown news came out. There's a lot with injuries and just in general, the sports medicine departments of NFL teams right now, I don't know what else to call it. There's a lot going on, and it's always nice to chat with you because you know what's going on, and there's so much misinformation, and there's such a lack of preaching to the choir right now. But lack of underreporting on how things actually work when it comes to injuries, concussion protocols, and all of it. And that's why I appreciate you coming on, because you've worked with these players. When Derek Johnson tore his ACL, you were the one working with him. When Mike DeVito got hurt, you were working with him. And all of the other guys, you've been in those rooms. You know how this process works. So I'm excited to have you on to educate us a little bit here.
Yeah, it's always great to kind of take an unbiased approach and kind of take the veil back and talk about the hows and whys of these things. So I'm happy to educate where I can for you guys.
Awesome. Well, let's start with the first one. And this from last night when I was watching the game, another scary situation with Tua Tagovailoa, the Miami Dolphins quarterback, suffering with what I saw last night on social media said his 4th documented concussion. I saw this morning on ESPN, it said his 3rd concussion, but we know it's the 2nd time that we've seen the arms lock out on a concussion, which is just scary for anyone that's watching and has any kind of like empathy or heart when they're seeing that kind of thing. When you're watching now, before we get into kind of the concussion stuff, when you're watching now a football game, when it happens, are you thinking as an athletic trainer, or are you just thinking as a football fan? Does your mind go there still, even though it's been a couple of years since you've been removed from it?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because my wife always gets on me when we watch football, because I'll yell at the TV and like tell the people on TV to do something if I don't see them doing it, or be like, get there quicker, or, somebody go hold his head, or whatever it might be, because it's hard to turn that off, right? Not saying that those people don't do that. It's just, that's my first instinct. Yeah. I'll be at my kids' soccer games, and I'll see a kid go down and I'll jump forward, or I'll kind of lunge forward, like ready to go out to the field, just because it's tough to turn that off, right? Last night, I was actually recording our podcast when I was watching it happen, and we kind of started to talk about it a little bit. But yeah, it's a scary situation anytime anybody goes down with a head injury. And we're not casting dispersions or placing blame or anything like that on the player himself. It is tough to turn off. You'd like to see him slide a little bit more instead of head first and things of that nature. But to your point, you do see they call that posturing, when the arms either curl, make a fist, or go out straight, right? And there's different types of posturing. We won't worry about the medical aspect of that right now. But, it's a pretty telltale sign, right? When you see that, it. And luckily, we've been educated to that as the public has become more and more, kind of knowledgeable about the subject. As far as the protocol goes, I think the Dolphins followed it great from what I could see on TV, right? The broadcast and how they defined it and talked about it is a whole nother story, and we can get into that another time. But what you see in the protocol now, and it's evolved even since I've been in the league, but they do 2 layers of testing. They do a very quick screen on the field in the blue tent to determine if more testing needs to be done. Now, last night, what we saw is once the player was safely gotten up off the ground, they determined that there was no other significant injury that needed to be taken care of on the field, such as a spine boarding or something like that. They walked him straight in. So they weren't even going to mess around with the first level. They took the appropriate steps based upon what they saw and they know about the athlete. And again, that goes to their familiarity with the athlete, right? They've done this with him. They know what he's like. And so all credit to the Miami medical staff for just saying, look, we're going to do this right by the kid. We're not even going to mess around. We're taking him straight in, right? And so, in that regard, I believe the concussion protocol did its job. It was followed, perfectly by the staff. And, I'm not very familiar with the Miami medical staff, but I can rest assured that as they were walking him in, one member of the people that were walking him in was a member of the medical staff, and also very closely followed by an independent neurologist or an unaffiliated neurotrauma person that the NFL now has the rules for to be on site for every head injury.
Yeah, like I said, I appreciate talking to you about these kinds of things because you're familiar with the process and when they're walking off and when they're doing certain things that they're following it. And like I said, it's been a few years since I'd been there, but I remember when they installed a lot of these things and remembering how much education there was in trying to teach everybody how this was going to work and that it was an independent neurologist from the NFL that could flag things. And obviously with Tua, like everyone sees it and that's easier to determine in terms of starting that process, whereas sometimes it could be a little more, I don't want to say subjective, but it's somebody spotting it from, I believe, a press box, correct?
Correct. There's independent spotters in the press box now that handle that job. Sometimes it's a player coming off the field and just telling you. And so, obviously last night was a very obvious sign. I mean, once everybody saw it, they knew it. More often than not, it's less obvious than that, though.
Okay. Let's move on to the next one. And this is one that personally is a little bit different, but still curious to get your thoughts. The Christian McCaffrey, Jordan Mason stuff from last week, in talking about Christian McCaffrey had some sort of calf issue throughout the week and then was declared inactive about probably 90 minutes before the game, maybe a little bit more before that officials meeting, which is always 90 minutes before the game where they declare inactives, where after the game, Jordan Mason had over 100 yards, first game, biggest game, best game of his career, young player, should be riding high, gets on the post-game presser after doing a interview where he was on the field with the TV broadcast where they asked him when he knew he was going to play, and he said Friday. And then Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers coach, goes to the presser knowing that his player just said he knew Friday. It said, why didn't you declare Christian McCaffrey out if you told your starting running back that he was going to play on Friday? Well, then the player comes to the podium after that where the coach kind of gets called out. And then the player is in trouble because of the way that he worded it. And the part for me, and I think people kind of figure out that communication. And if you lie on injury reports because of gaming law, like all different kinds of reasons, the NFL they could take draft picks, huge fines. It's a huge deal if they're not declaring injury stuff. Not saying there's not gamesmanship across the NFL with this stuff. Like it's, again, very subjective. And we don't know exactly what Kyle Shanahan may have communicated. He may have just said, hey, be ready. And that was enough for the kid to be like, hey, I'm going to play. And that's what he reiterated. And Shanahan after the game was like, I didn't tell him he was going to start. We didn't know McCaffrey wasn't going to play. So both things could be true. But for me, the only thing that really pissed me off as somebody who has no skin in this game at all was
you
that
had
kid
CMC on your fantasy team, didn't you? You did.
No, I don't have. I have Saquon. Yeah, I did not take McCaffrey. I feel bad for fantasy people. That game's on a Monday night. You can't go find anybody. And now with fantasy being as prevalent as it is, like there's a lot of money on the line for a lot of people. Kyle Shanahan's not going to care, and he shouldn't. But I cared that Jordan Mason should have had a hell of a time on a presser talking about a hell of a performance, and instead he's up there saying, this is why I don't talk to media. I have no comment. He obviously got in trouble, and that's the fault of all the people around him not properly communicating everything so he can get up on a podium and talk about what he should be talking about.
So I think what we saw this week, not just in this instance, but in another one, on another team, is that you've got this Venn diagram. And for anybody that doesn't know what a Venn diagram is, it's several layers that overlap, and you kind of take the thing in the middle, right? So I think you've got this Venn diagram of gamesmanship, poor communication, and reality, right? And so obviously, from what I know about the situation, CMC was listed as questionable or probable throughout the week. Probably questionable, I'm assuming. And I'm sure he didn't take limited, if any, reps at practice. And my understanding of the situation was that up until the 11th hour, they were saying, we think he's going to try to go, blah, 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 right? All right, that happens every week, right? Yeah. That happens nonstop, whether a player is going to play or not. Let's be very honest about that and transparent. That's gamesmanship. And I think that's okay to an extent, right? But if you're going to play that game, you better have kind of all your ducks in a row with communication and, tell people that and make sure that people understand that, if the lines of communication between that head coach and that player were not clear, well, then that's on them somewhere, right? And so that's all fine and good. But now I think we already saw this week that they're not planning on having McCaffrey again. Yeah. So where's the reality there? Where's the truth? And so from my side of things, from where my interest lies, not so much with the players and the performance, I'm going to be curious to see what the NFL does as far as any potential discipline for the situation, because then that will dictate how these types of things go down in the future.
Yeah, because I never saw a report saying that he tried to give it a go and it re-aggravated and got worse. There was nothing about anything getting worse. It was just, hey, he's going to try to go. We're going to be good. And then now, like you said, a week out, it's like he's probably not going to play next week.
And it's has whiffs of the Russell Wilson situation in Pittsburgh as well, too. A player complaining of something midweek, going to try to go, last minute not. So, these types of situations get handled. Not often publicly, but we'll see what happens.
I think people that haven't been there would be surprised to learn how big a deal it is for a player, especially a quarterback, to take all the first team reps in practice all week, go through as if you're going to be the one starting, and then all of a sudden at the last minute be like, I don't think I can go. That effect is well beyond just, you got some reps. Like, no, reps are about the most important thing throughout the week, and making sure the game plans are set. They're going through blitz pickup, third down, first down, red zone. Like, everything is planned around what the game plan is for that week. All the reps are planned for that week. And then at the last minute for the backup who got no reps the entire time, like, you're playing. That's a tough position to put your entire team in, not just the quarterback, not just his fantasy. It's people in the locker room that are going to be looking at you a little sideways too.
Yeah, from a procedural standpoint, I'll be interested to see how the league handles this stuff.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next one, talking about procedural things. This one, I texted you as soon as I saw and heard about it. You're the first person I reached out to. And those were the comments from Kyle Van Noy regarding his orbital injury that he suffered against the Chiefs last Thursday. Was injured during the game, and on his podcast afterwards, basically let it be known that he was unhappy that he had to sit unattended. I shouldn't say unattended, unattended for the person they were waiting on, the specialist, to come down and see them. That he thought that person should have been there much sooner than they were. It basically called out the Chiefs' athletic training staff and everybody involved with the Chiefs for not taking care of him better than they did. Yeah. This is the first that I've heard of even learning what the process is for an opposing team's injured player who needs a specialist to come check them out in the moment. I had no idea there was a process for this sort of thing. So that's why when I saw it, he complained about it. Like, you know what?
We think of it.
Learn something new every day. Like, what is this process? How does this work? And for somebody that's been there who understands a specialist and how this works, what is this situation?
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to push back overarching on this entire process, and then I'm going to explain it.
Okay.
So when a team travels in the NFL, they're required to travel with 2 orthopods and 1 internal medical person. That's 2 guys that do surgery and evaluate orthopedic injuries, and at least 1 medical person.
And for the most part, these are not full-time employees. Like for the Chiefs, it's the University of Kansas health system people, correct?
Yeah, whoever might sponsor a certain team, I have no idea who does both.
Right, but it's not the athletic training staff. This is not normally a
this is in addition to the athletic training staff.
Yeah.
Right. And so every team has XYZ medical personnel that are required to be on their sideline for a visiting game to travel with. Now, a team can bring whomever they want. That's up to their discretion, but there are minimum requirements. Now, as a home team, and this is on the NFL Ops team page. You can go look at this. I posted it on my X account earlier this week for somebody who had a question about it. The home team is required to have so many ancillary, and I don't mean ancillary in a negative way. I mean not full-time docs, right? Mm-hmm. Ancillary people in the stands or present for visiting team consultations and home team consultations too, right? So this includes dentists. This now includes ophthalmologists. That was not a requirement when I was in the league. They've added that, right? So these individuals have to be on site, not necessarily on the sideline, not necessarily in the locker room, but in the building, okay? So that's every stadium, but no exceptions. That has to be done. Now,
I had no idea. Sorry.
I'm
fascinated. So they could be a fan in the stands that just has an agreement, like something like that?
No, it has to be an employee. It has to be a team approved, thing, right? Okay. So the Chiefs have a team dentist that sits in the stands for them. The Chiefs have a team ophthalmologist. The Ravens do the same at their games, right? That's just how it has to happen. And so that's only for the safety of the players and, the safety of the visiting team as well. Yeah. And if you or the producer wants to go look at my X account and link this in the podcast, you can see the graphic that I put up that talks about that. So, it tucks on it, yeah. So anyway, that's the baseline. So just understand that. Now, imagine this. Orbital fracture, we're talking about the area underneath your eye bone, or your eye socket, excuse me. These can be seen, first of all, they're evaluated by an ortho or an internal medical physician because they're the first point of contact for any team, right? So I didn't see this injury happen. I didn't watch the film or anything like that. But I can imagine that this player was walked off by a member of his own medical staff and then evaluated in the visiting locker room by his team physicians. Now, once those team physicians make a determination on the triage of the injury, is it safe to be here or does he need to be transported? That's their decision. No one else's, right? Okay, so they've made that decision that he's safe enough to be evaluated there. He doesn't need to go by ambulance to a hospital. This isn't a medical emergency. So by baseline, it's already determined that this is not a really, really important injury, right? This is just something that needs to be looked at. Okay, so there's the first layer. The second layer is when you call me or text me, right? I may not look at it right away, right? And if I do, there's a process for me getting back to you. So the visiting team will then contact the home team medical staff, and there's a designated person on each medical staff to deal with that, right? And that person might be on the sidelines or in the locker room, depending upon how each home team runs their medical staff. I'm not going to get into whys and hows about all that because everybody does it a little bit differently.
Right.
They will say that they need one of the ancillary docs to come down to their locker room to evaluate their player. Now, if that doc is not on the sideline or in the home team's locker room, they're in the stands someplace because they are on call, but also on site.
Which is all they're supposed to be.
They have to be in the building, right? So every single team does this differently. Some people put them on the sideline. Some people put them in the stands. Some people put them in the locker room. That's up to their discretion, right?
Yeah.
So go through this process in your head, if you will, for a minute. make the call to the visiting team makes the call to the home team. The home team contacts the doc, whether they be on the sideline or in the locker room or wherever, to go to the visiting locker room.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that player was probably told that, yes, we're going to get somebody down here. But then go through that process that I just did and understand that it might take a minute or two to get that person there to evaluate them. Now, if you or I go to the ER for this process, it's multiple hours. We're sitting there before an ophthalmologist comes and looks at us, right? So 10 or 15 minutes is, in my opinion, for what they're going to have already considered a non-emergent evaluation, or else he would have been transferred immediately, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit because I understand they lost, and if they win, who knows if this conversation's even happening, right? Like, I just don't feel like... I understand the player's upset that he's hurt. It took a little bit longer than what he wanted, but that doesn't mean that the appropriate steps weren't followed and the process wasn't followed correctly.
Yeah.
So there's layers here, that it's not just like, hey, get the guy here now. That's not how it works. In a non-emergent situation where a secondary doc is going to come evaluate you as a courtesy to the player, it takes a couple of minutes. And his team, therefore, had already definitively decided that this was not an emergent situation. He wasn't being transported. And the topping on this for me is that orbital fractures are definitively diagnosed with something called a CT scan. 0 teams have a CT scanner at their stadium. They just don't. That's not something that's used very commonly. So there's all kinds of layers to this, right?
Yeah.
I just don't think the hubbub and the brouhaha that came out of this, it's one of those things that the narrative is better than the actual story, I think.
Yeah. To me, this scream... Sorry, I mean,
I'm just going to push back on the whole process of like being upset about it. And like the medical care, the game was still going on. He didn't have to stay late. They didn't hold up the plane. It wasn't an emergent condition. He's fine. All the docs and all the people did their jobs. It just wasn't as fast as he liked. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
To me, the fact that he quickly went to the NFLPA report cards of the Chiefs getting a low grade.
That felt like
having that information made me tell like that he knew that, or he knows somebody that knew that may not like the training staff, and that there's more to this than just that moment and that situation.
Putting all that stuff aside, and I don't want to belittle it or dismiss that from the PA standpoint of things. I think the reality is that the player was taken care of expertly by his staff and the Chiefs' home staff, ancillary docs, and it happened how it was supposed to happen. The fact that the player thought it took a little bit too long, I mean, okay, fine. That's his right. He's allowed to think that. I'm not telling him he can't think that.
Yeah.
I would challenge him to understand the process a bit more. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Why would a former Patriots player that's watching the Chiefs dynasty that had his season ended last year, that lost another game at home in a tough one when this is supposed to be their season, I can't imagine why he'd be upset.
There you go, injecting emotion into it again. You got to just take all that out of it, man.
He put emotion into this. He called out people who didn't deserve to be called out because he's upset.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things where the narrative beats the story, so to speak.
Yeah. All right. Well, last one, we probably should have started with this one. I appreciate everybody who's hanging out. Again, we're talking with Aaron Borgmann, star of the new podcast, Sports Med Bros, alongside Evan Kraft. Make sure to go check it out. Yeah, you're a star, okay? And you're a legendary athletic trainer. But yeah, the Hollywood Brown, the news came out today that he's going to be having surgery on that shoulder and go from there. Just, have you dealt with this injury before? And not to put timelines, because I know people don't like timelines, but just what's the process look like for Hollywood going forward?
I will fall on my sword here and be completely honest and transparent. I've never see surgical reconstruction is basically what they're doing. Consider a dislocated joint of any type, right? Surgery is always an option to help that joint recover its stability, right? And so the Chiefs, as I said to others when it first happened, are dealing with this for the second time in recent years. And in the last 10 or 15 years, I can only remember 3 total. The Chiefs have done 2 of them now. So they're quickly becoming the authority on this and would always defer to their expertise with this. Now, anytime you dislocate a joint, you've compromised that joint's stability, right? And a lot of times, we consider the SC, which is, right here, to be one of the more stable joints of your body, despite it dislocating in the first place, right? So it's inherently a very stable joint. It's very tough to dislocate, one. And then two, once it is relocated, it generally, from my understanding and what I've read, is very stable. Now, that doesn't seem like that's been the case here. What we have to deal with is every time you raise your arm or every time you move your arm in and out, you get a tiny little bit of movement right here, right at that SC joint. So if the player was getting on in rehab and just lacked that stability, well, then you can't obviously return to football. The first thing that we do as medical staffs and medical providers is we determine safety. Yeah. And not only for short-term return to play, but also long-term health. And so clearly what they've determined is that this situation has not been improving upon the path that they want it to. And I think this is a good time frame to test that out. They clearly have been working with him ever since that first initial injury. And so in my mind, what is better is that they said, look, this isn't working. If this player is going to be his best and help us at all, we have to change course and pivot here. And that, to me, is the sign of a really, good thought process and a really good injury recovery process, as opposed to just keep going down the line and hoping things change, right? Because then what happens is every timeline that I've read about this injury, and yes, I do Google stuff myself and try to learn about it because I was lacking in the information on this surgery. Doing this now gives the player a chance. And if you wait another month, it may not. And so I think the most important thing to take away here is the Chiefs medical staff determined that this was what is best for the player to have a shot, as opposed to keep, going down a path that wasn't working. So I would again applaud them for their efforts.
Absolutely. Well, Aaron, man, we appreciate you for stopping by. I always appreciate chatting with you and getting some information. We spent 25 minutes talking the medical injury and all the different things that are going on in the NFL right now. And it's always great to get perspective from somebody who knows what's going on.
No problem. I'm happy to educate whatever I can. And I appreciate you having me on as always.
All right. You keep fighting the good fight. I want to see you on an NFL sideline soon, or somebody on an NFL sideline explaining these things as they're happening. So quality information comes out. So every time there's an injury and something's going on, I don't get on Twitter to see what your reaction is to the reporting. It's entertaining. Not going to lie.
Well, I appreciate you, BJ.
All right. Check out Sports Med Bros with Aaron and Evan Kraft. It's going to be a good podcast. And we'll continue this podcast with some things that I'm looking forward to from around the league and with the Chiefs matchup against the Bengals specifically right after this break. We appreciate you all for hanging out.
Shop Chiefs tickets and more with no fees. Plus, save big with code KCSN at ticketsforless.com, the official ticket provider of KC Sports Network.
When you discover a new binge-worthy show or a song that you bump on repeat and you have to share it with your friends so they can experience just how awesome it is, that's kind of what it feels like when you discover Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan. That's such an awesome deal. There's no way you can keep it to yourself. Friends don't let friends overpay for wireless. Say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plan and switch to Mint Mobile. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you and your squad with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/KCSN10. That's mintmobile.com/KCSN10. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/KCSN10. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
What's up? Welcome back to this episode of 10 Things. Appreciate Aaron Borgmann for stopping by. Didn't expect it to be necessarily half the show or about 25 minutes of the show, but we're all football fans. We like to watch the games and to be educated on the processes of what's going on. So when you're sitting there and somebody gets hurt or something happens in a game and one of your buddies or one of your friends says something that is incorrect, you can kind of tell them like, hey, that's not how this works. And you can do that because Aaron Borgmann is very good at what he does. So, all right, let's move on to the fourth thing that I'm looking forward to this weekend. And I'm going to jump around here a little bit. The last few are going to be Chiefs specific. The next few are going to be kind of NFL specific. Always going to have a tie back to the Chiefs. But for me, one thing I'm looking forward to this weekend, the Sunday night matchup might be the game I'm looking forward to the most. That's the Chicago Bears and the Houston Texans. To me, Caleb Williams, who's been compared to Mahomes, he's got all the talent. There's all this Chicago's rallying behind him, all the reasons to have hope and be excited. As Chiefs fans, we understand what that feeling is like back when they drafted Patrick Mahomes. And I just feel like this game on Sunday night, because it's Caleb Williams against DeMeco Ryans, one of the best young coaches in football. The Houston Texans, for me personally, one of the teams that if you're going to figure out which team is going to threaten the Chiefs' ability to continue to call themselves this dynasty and win 3 in a row. I don't know if it's going to be this year necessarily, but Houston is very close to being ready as teams like Cincinnati and Buffalo, still very good, a little bit older. They've got some things going on. Obviously, Miami with the issues with Tua, don't know what that's going to be. It's changing what the outlook of their season, even with Skylar Thompson as a K-State fan. But for Sunday night, for the Chicago Bears, for Caleb Williams, and for the Texans as a team, under the lights, national TV, everybody watching, you have the platform, you have the ability to create a moment for either Caleb individually or for the Houston Texans as a team where everyone's like, now they're ready. Like, now we see what this is. I just feel like Sunday night's game is that platform for one of them, whether it's the Texans as a team, CJ Stroud and company, or if it's Caleb Williams just showing like, hey, he really is the future of, the NFC in terms of quarterbacks, as one of those guys that is going to be a dude that is going to carry his team. And again, I'm just looking forward to Sunday night for that reason. Another thing I'm looking forward to, watching Baltimore. They've got a sneak. I'm not saying Las Vegas is good. What I'm saying is Baltimore, this is their season. They were going to make a run at it. We talked about, my opinion, Kyle Van Noy being upset about the Chiefs, not just about his personal situation, but also just in general what's going on. Baltimore sitting at 0-1. They face the Raiders this week. The next 3 games for the Baltimore Ravens after the Raiders: the Dallas Cowboys, the Buffalo Bills, and then at the Cincinnati Bengals. It would be a really tough look for them to start 0-2 and then stare at those 3 matchups coming up next. Again, I expect them to beat Las Vegas, but if they don't, or if that game ends up getting a little bit closer than we thought as Chiefs fans, if you're watching the scoreboard and you see it, just know that's a really tough look for Baltimore to be staring at going to Dallas at 0-2. Not that Dallas is a sure thing. We've seen that every year, but again, just kind of playing out these early storylines following Baltimore is a big one. Now let's get into some of the Chiefs-related things. The next 5 are all going to be related to the matchup this week. And the first one's Cam Taylor-Britt. I know everybody's been talking about it. The comments that he had on Xavier Worthy, which it's not that he was being disrespectful necessarily. I don't think he meant it in a the tone was unnecessary. The comments were unnecessary. I don't think if Xavier Worthy, somebody's going to watch that, it's going to be the same thing that we've seen in the past with some other comments that have been made. To me, it's very similar to like the Jamar Chase saying, I'm not saying that guy's name. He's like, I'm salty. He just comes out and admits it. It's like, I'm salty. I don't really like these guys. It's actually moving into the next one. It's Jamar Chase saying that he's salty and I like it. But Cam Taylor-Britt, there's just no reason to take this tone to the angle. And for me, you're not baiting Xavier Worthy by calling out saying that he can only run in a straight line and make a play. To me, you're calling out Andy Reid, because Andy Reid's the one who's going to listen to that and put Xavier Worthy in a position to make a play on you or your defense where he's not running in a straight line. And if there's somebody that I wouldn't bait in a situation that for play design, it's probably Andy Reid. And I don't know if it's going to be this matchup. Maybe he'll save it for the next one. But players love playing for Andy Reid, and without any proof or any belief, I wholeheartedly believe if there's an opportunity in this game because of what Cam Taylor-Britt said, there's a little piece of Andy Reid's brain that's got something in mind if something happens, like, oh, this is going to be good right here. And if it happens, I don't think we'll get a smirk. I don't think we'll get a comment after the game. But those who really pay attention and diagram things, hopefully the guys with the KC Lab and Only Weird Games here on our network, will be able to go find that play, how they set it up, how they found success with it. But again, Cam Taylor-Britt, you weren't calling out Xavier Worthy in my mind. You were calling out Andy Reid's ability to put him in position. And good luck. Good luck getting your hands on him. Good luck slowing him down, because it's not just him. You got to stop all of them, and they've got enough things to worry about on that side. Anyways, and talking about the Bengals defense, moving on, I'm kind of running like three of these things together. I apologize. One thing that hasn't been discussed a ton, at least from my point of view, at least a lot of stuff I've seen on social regarding the Bengals defense, Lou Anarumo's still there. He's one of the best defensive coordinators. He has had success against the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. We've seen it. One player that's missing, DJ Reader, that they've had for the last 3 years, and he's not there. DJ Reader, the only two defensive tackles of the last 3 years ranked higher on Pro Football Focus than DJ Reader are Chris Jones and Quinnen Williams. Cam Hayward 2 years ago was ranked higher, so you could throw Cam Hayward in that mix too, to be completely honest about it, or up to date on it. But either way, you're removing one of the 3 or 4 best defensive tackles in the conference and removing him off of your team. You've got Logan Wilson, who's banged up, one of your best linebacker, who's banged up, and then Chidobe Awuzie left in free agency this offseason. So Cincinnati's struggling. There's a lot of talk about Joe Burrow's wrist. We'll get into that here in a minute. But from a defensive perspective and how the Chiefs are going to face this team, this is not the same Bengals defense. And the next best player in their team, Trey Hendrickson, spent the offseason asking for a trade. So it's not awesome for them, but I don't think the DJ Reader stuff has been discussed enough as it relates to the success in the past the Bengals have had against the Chiefs offense. That's like saying the Chiefs defense, and using historical data and how successful they've been, would be going into a matchup where Chris Jones is not playing. Like, that should be discussed in that conversation. So not going to make the simple thing that Isaiah Pacheco could have a big game because the dude's not there. And Sheldon Rankins, who replaced him, is a good player, but he's not DJ Reader. And so Chiefs fans that are worried about, this defense has had success, it's not the same defense that we've seen in the past. So we'll see how it plays out. But the DJ Reader stuff, to me, just one thing I'm looking forward to. I just haven't seen enough of that conversation of what it's going to be for them to not have that dude. Going back to the Jamar Chase stuff, as I got Tucker in here, I love the Jamar Chase. The Jamar Chase talking his way about the Chiefs in a non-disrespectful manner, but just not liking us, is the perfect, in today's era, exactly what a rivalry looks like. They can't do the things that they did 20 years ago and say the things they did 20 years ago. There's cameras everywhere. Like, you can't do some of those things. And now everybody's friendly and they're all friends and they hang out. More so, I guess, than Jamar Chase and them probably aren't hanging out. But this is what's great about football. This is a actual rivalry. And that he's not being disrespectful about it, but just saying, don't like those guys. Don't want to talk about them. Just want to beat them. Just going to let my play do the talking, all the stuff that he's doing now while he's still talking, saying that we're the team to beat in the AFC. And that doesn't bother me because every player in the league should say it. It doesn't mean I'm not going to put a quote about it, not mean that Freezing Cold Takes isn't going to go do something with it. It's still going to laugh. I'm still going to like the tweet. But I like the rivalry aspect of things. That's why Kobe Bryant was my favorite player growing up, because he wasn't friends with the guys he was playing against. When you're on the field, you're not friends with those dudes. And I like the guys that treat it like that, that have a little, not animosity, but you're not friends with those people, especially with football. Like when they don't like each other. So I appreciate the Jamar Chase stuff, and I'm not going to be surprised every time they shove a mic in his face and ask him about the Chiefs that whatever he says is going to rile up Chiefs fans, because they forget that he's admitted that he doesn't like us, and that's not going to change. All right. On the Chiefs side of things, one thing I am looking forward to is Leo Chanel. Was last week's performance a sign of things to come, or was it just the right matchup, the right guy in the right spot, the right looks, and made some plays? He made several plays, and he made them from a variety of alignments. They moved him around quite a bit, which is kind of the deal for him coming in. He wasn't known as somebody that was going to make plays in pass coverage, bat passes down in space, but yet the biggest play of the Thursday night game, in my opinion, was his batted pass down, because that was a touchdown. It was a goal-to-go situation on third down. He batted the pass. That dude was walking into the end zone, and that game is completely different with a touchdown in that situation. But then, the stuff in space isn't what he was known for. He's known for being a rush Sam guy who's going to come downhill and be aggressive, take on blocks, get physical in the running game. Very similar to like Karlaftis, and they're just like a second, third effort guy who's going to make plays in at or around the line of scrimmage. With the way he comes downhill when he was drafted, said this guy's going to be a fan favorite just because of the style and the way in which he plays, coming downhill and making those kind of physical plays. But yeah, I'm excited to see how they utilize Leo Chanel this week, and if he can continue to grow, because as guys like Willie Gay and other guys leaving free agency, you need young guys to make a step up. Yes, Chris Jones needs to be a superstar, Karlaftis needs to step up, but it's guys like Leo Chanel, Felix Anudike, these guys getting Shamari Connor, those guys getting a little bit better and taking a step forward. So the 3 or 4 times that their number is called throughout the season to make a game-changing play, that they are prepared and ready to do it. Leo Chanel showed in week 1 that he is prepared and ready to do that. All right, folks, my final thing to watch for, that I'm looking forward to watching for on Sunday in this game is the simple one. Is Joe Burrow healthy? His wrist, all of the talk about, the water bottle and the replay of how he held the water bottle and did he wince and all those different types of things. Joe Burrow can laugh about it in pressers all he wants, but we have eyes. We can watch the game. That it's coming back from something that was a lot more serious than they had initially determined. And wrist's not something you necessarily mess around with. And so we'll see how it goes, but wasn't great last week. We've seen what he is when he's healthy. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League, but if it doesn't look like that now, after all the time and all the rehab, that's a tough situation for the Bengals, especially when you've got 2 receivers who want to get paid. And you already paid a quarterback that now might not be able to deliver the football to them. And does that change their strategy of paying 25, 30, 35, whatever $1 million in guaranteed money each year to receivers when you don't have a quarterback to get them the football? It's just a very interesting situation all the way around, but something I will be watching for in the game is how can he get the ball from the far hash to the outside to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, where these guys win. Can he get the ball to him in those kinds of situations? So hopefully not. It's going to be another test for Trent McDuffie and company to see what McDuffie does. We saw him kind of follow Zay Flowers around. Does he do something similar this week? We'll see, but appreciate everybody for hanging out. Again, kind of a special episode. Normally, again, this is a game recap, but with the game being on Thursday last week, and then with the Sunday, kind of skipped through this entire week. So I did a special show, and there was so much medical stuff going on that I wanted to bring Aaron on and kind of talk throughout the league on what was going on. But appreciate everybody for hanging out, spending some time. Whether you're on YouTube or you're listening to the audio podcast, we appreciate your support of what we got going on here, and we appreciate Mission Taco Joint or Session Tacos, however they're going to be branded going forward. I believe if you go to the stores right now, you go to the restaurant, it's still going to say Mission Taco Joint, but they're in the process of rebranding to Session Tacos because of that lawsuit from the Mission Taco Tortilla Company. Interesting. Mission Taco had been around for like 8 or 9 years, so that Tucker's not in. Interesting deal, but not anything I understand or whatever. So again, appreciate everybody for hanging out. Sorry for jumping around with you, but yeah, we'll see you next time, and make sure to check out 5 Things to Watch and all of the other content that we've got here on KCSN, getting you ready for Chiefs Bengals on Sunday afternoon. If you're going out to the game, you want to swing by our tailgate, we'll be over in Lot J. Not the humongous party at Lot J. We're kind of like the suburb of Lot J's party. We're kind of like the Overland Park to the P&L and the downtown. We're kind of on the outskirts a little bit, but we will have drinks. We will have food that you can come by. We'll set you up, get you taken care of. Haley will be hanging out. I'll be over there with my family, playing some tailgate games on Sunday. So come hit us up in Lot J if you're around. We'll walk down to the giant party at Lot J a couple times. But yep, appreciate everybody for hanging out. We'll see you next time.